So welcome, guys. Thank you for coming out here. This is going to be um, at the beginning, basically. We're going to start with just kind of a quick seminar, 20, 30 minutes, something like that. And for that period, we aren't going to have any questions, just so that we can get through it, because there are going to be people who listen to this later on a recording on YouTube, and I just want to make sure we get through everything for them. After that, we're going to have a Q&A session where I'm here for as long as you want, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have. Just a quick introduction to myself for everyone who listens to this later and for you guys who are listening to it live. I'm Ken. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Pointwise. And what we do is we basically have an app where you can connect your existing credit and debit cards to the app. And we analyze your spending, compare it to the benefits and the credits of every different credit card that's out there. And we basically tell you which credit card to get and exactly when to get it, so that you can maximize whatever your goals from credit cards are from those credit cards. If your goals are travel, which is the title of this presentation, right, from groceries to getaways, then we're going to help you with that also. And so this is kind of the golden rule before we get started for different credit cards, right? You want to make sure that your credit cards are actually paid off every month. And if you remember one thing from this presentation, that's what it should be, or the rest of it just isn't worthwhile at all, because you're going to be paying way more in interest than it's actually worth your time and effort to use the credit cards at all. So this is kind of a joke up here, right? When your credit's so bad you receive a credit card offer that's pre-declined, that's not going to happen, but it may as well happen if your credit is that bad, right? You want to make sure that everything is paid off in full every month, and that's kind of just the starter. But I'm sure you all know that. So beyond that, why should you care? And I think there are really two reasons that most people should care about credit cards. And I hear people say all the time, well, it's just 1 or 2%. You know, Dave Ramsey says, I'm not going to get rich off of credit cards, right? Why should I really care so much about credit cards? Why should I even think about, automating or optimizing my rewards? It doesn't really do that much for me, right? I'm going to earn maybe $100 a year, $200 a year. What's the difference? And if you look at the data that we actually have, it's pretty obvious that the average American can actually earn way more than just, a couple $100s a year. It looks like the average person can actually save around $3,000 to $5,000 a year by just using the right credit card. And so it's really a lot of money, right? And if you're thinking of, if you're an average person, right, you might be saving $1,000 to $2,000 a month if you're a young professional right out of college. And if you want to take one really nice vacation throughout the year, right, that one single vacation might bring you back down, $5,000, $10,000. That's half of your year's savings, right? That just goes out the door right away. And so we can replenish that really, really quickly with credit cards. And so on that note, Dave Ramsey might be wrong, right? You might actually be able to double your savings rate by just using credit cards for the vacations that you're already doing. And lastly, it opens up a huge opportunity to travel in aspirational ways that weren't really available beforehand. So for example, I'm someone who's very budget conscious. I don't like spending a lot of money. And I know that lots of you guys are too. And on top of that, I'm someone who doesn't make a ton of money, right? And so for me, first class travel, 5-star hotels, right, it's really out of the question. But then if you look at credit cards, right, it opens up that entire door, because the points are so valuable that you can stay at these 5-star resorts sometimes for the price of a 2-star hotel, or even less, or even for free. And so you really open up these aspirational trips that weren't available to you before. So enough of an intro, kind of dragged on there. Let's get on to the real stuff. It's going to be divided into kind of 2 parts, this presentation. The first part is going to be about which credit card you should get, and making sure you get the best card, and making sure you're thinking about credit cards the right way. The second part is going to be about travel. And that's going to be about how to use the points that you already have, or the points that you earn with the knowledge from this first half of the presentation, and how you use those to get the best travel redemptions that you can possibly find. So the first way that people usually think about credit cards is they divide it into 2 categories, right? You have travel and you have cash back. If you're in this presentation, I assume you care at least a decent amount about travel, but there are good reasons for that too, right? Travel can actually get you more rewards than cash back. It's not apples for apples, but at the same time, it's not such a clean comparison, right? A lot of cash back cards can actually be used for travel. So for example, if you have the Chase Freedom Unlimited, it's a very popular cashback card. It gets you 1.5% cash back on everything. Really, you're just earning Chase points. And those Chase points can be used if you have a Sapphire card with all of Chase's various transfer partners that get you all the great travel benefits we're going to talk about later. And at the same time, right, if you look at something like the American Express Platinum card, which is very much a travel card, if you really wanted, you could redeem the points for cash back. It would just be at a much lower value than if you use them for travel. And so the way that I want you guys to think about this is not, oh, well, I have a card and it's either a travel card or a cashback card. It's that every card has two values. Each card has a value that the points have when used for cash back, the value that the points have when used for travel. And you want to make sure that you're using a card when you look at like 2x or 3x, you want to make sure that you're actually calculating, right, how much is this point worth to me? So for example, when I mentioned 2 or 3x, I'm sure you guys all know what category multipliers are. That's just the percent back you get on each card, right? If I have 2% cash back on one card versus 2% points back on another card, if I'm using my points for travel, that 2% points back could be worth the equivalent of 2 cents each per point times the 2 points you get, which really means it's like you're getting 4% cash back, right? But you just don't have that if you compare everything as X back and percent back mean the same thing. No, miles back are oftentimes, if you're willing to use them for travel, worth way more than cash back. So the only real thing I want you guys to take away, aside from that on this slide, is that most people think about credit cards the wrong way. They think about credit cards in terms of multipliers, and they want to make sure that they get their 3x multiplier on the category they spend on. And that's all well and good, and that is important. But really, if you're getting 2x on everything, and a very simple card, I'll drop a link for that down in the description below. Full disclosure, if you use this link, we get rewarded, so you don't have to use this at all. But one of the, how do I get into this chat? Here we are. So yeah, this is my favorite card for just like regular spending. It's the Capital One Venture X card, and it's basically a 2% back card on everything. You see a crazy annual fee there. We'll talk about that later on. You don't really have to worry about it. It gives you enough benefits to outweigh it. But the point is that if you're not getting 2% back on something, you really shouldn't pay attention to it. So you have lots of cards that have like, oh, well, we have bonus categories for travel, and then you look and it says 2x back on travel. That just means this card should really not be used by anyone, because if their bonus category is only as good as like the base category on a regular 2% back on everything card, you should just ignore that. But on top of that, right, optimizing your 2x back versus 3x back, as we're going to get to later, is actually not the way to get the most value from your points. And it's a big trap people go into. They try to figure out, okay, I spend this much on this category, this much on this category. Really, the difference between 2 and 3x, it's a difference of 1%. So if you spend 10 grand a year on groceries, right, you're only looking at a difference of $100. And so when we're trying to get thousands of dollars in value each year, that's not really the right way to look at it. But I think we should hold the rest of that for later in the conversation and just move on to credits for now. So when it comes to the credits, this is a part of a card that actually goes unnoticed for lots of people. Lots of you have premium travel credit cards. So if you have stuff like the Chase Sapphire Reserve, the Amex Platinum card, the Capital One Venture X that we just spoke about, these premium cards are usually not just credit cards, but they're really like memberships, like little clubs. And these memberships you can get into by paying the annual fee, and they just so happen to have a credit card. And what comes with your membership, you might ask? Well, it comes with access to different lounges. So we're going to talk about those later. It might come with access to different discount stores, and it might even give you credits at those stores. And so lots of them do. And I've met a bunch of people who have, for example, the Amex Platinum card, which is basically a coupon book at this point because it has so many different credits. And they only have it because they heard, oh, I travel a lot, therefore I'm going to get the Amex Platinum card. And they didn't even think, oh, are the benefits actually worth the annual fee? And when people say it's a travel card, what does that even mean? Because that's kind of a fuzzy term, right? And so you have to be sure that when you're getting one of these high annual fee cards, you have to make sure the credits are actually worthwhile for you specifically. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example. The Amex Platinum comes with $200 a year towards Uber, right? So if you use Uber regularly, right, you can value that as a full $200 and basically subtract that from the annual fee when you're calculating, okay, is this card worth it for me? Is it not? One of the good things we do at PointWise is when we look at your spending, we actually do that all for you. So we go back in your spending and we see, okay, where did you actually spend your money? And how much would this benefit have actually been worth to you in the last year? And then we'll take that number and assume it'll be similar moving forward. And then we're able to say, okay, I understand you spent $100 at Uber last year, so we can count this as a $100 credit, but not really at the full $200 value because you'd be going out of your way to use it, right? It's not actually worth that full amount for you. Yeah, on top of credits, you have benefits. And so benefits are also really interesting because benefits are harder to value, right? They're not like credits where if you say, okay, we're giving you $200 a year towards Uber, we know it's $200 a year towards Uber. But when it comes to a benefit, right, that can be something like lounge access. It can be a free night at a hotel, right? And those hotels could be worth up to hundreds, if not thousands of dollars a night. You can have a free checked bag. And sometimes if you have some of the United cards, right, you can get free checked bags, not just for you, but for everyone you're traveling with. So again, PointWise also looks at this. So if we sense that you have a checked bag on your United flight, right, we'll count that towards the valuation that we give a United card when we're valuing cards for you. But again, you just have to be sure that you're not overvaluing the benefits. So for example, I love going to the airport lounges, right? I love lounge access. But would I pay on my own lounge access? Not at all, right? I would just be sitting there waiting for my flight. I get to the same place, right? The airport's to get me from point A to point B. So I'm not really going to do anything, right? So if I wouldn't pay for the lounge access, I understand that I love it when I go to the airport. I don't really think it's worth the full $50 a visit that they would charge if I didn't have the credit card, right? So you just have to be careful that you're not overvaluing these things in your head. Lastly, the annual fees, and then we'll get into the stuff that you guys are probably less familiar with. But when it comes to the annual fees, right, the annual fees, again, don't buy into the hype, right? A lot of people get cards with high annual fees like the Amex Gold and the Amex Platinum just because they're hyped and they don't really know if the card is worth it for them. What you really have to do is look at a card and look at its credits and benefits and decide if the annual fee is worth it. Because almost always the annual fee is not worth it just for the multipliers. So for example, the Amex Gold card gets you 4x back on US supermarkets, 4x back on restaurants, right? That's incredible. That's a really, really high category, especially because Amex points are worth around 2 cents each when you use them for travel. So that's like 8% back at restaurants and 8% back at supermarkets. So that's a great earnings category. But at the same time, if I'm paying a $375 annual fee, right, I can get 3x back at those categories instead of 4x so many different ways for no annual fee, right? So why am I paying the $375 annual fee for the gold card? It's because the credits and the benefits I think are worth it for me. Okay, so this is the most ignored part of credit cards for the average person. It's what enthusiasts like myself focus on the most, and there's a good reason for that. And it's because welcome offers or sign-up bonuses are far and away where you get the most points from your credit cards. So one single sign-up bonus can pretty easily get you $1,000 worth of value, which might be, right, that might be more than you earn for multipliers for an entire year. It might be what you earn for multipliers for several years. And so if you get 2 welcome offers, each worth $1,000 in a year, you just earned $2,000 from your credit cards, just like that. And usually the spending required in order to hit these welcome offers is not that high, and most people can do it with their normal course of spending. And so if that's the case, right, then these credit cards become way more valuable to you. And here's another kicker, right? Just because you say, one reason a lot of people don't end up getting premium credit cards is because they say, well, listen, this $95 annual fee isn't really worth it for me after the first year, and they only give me the bonus in the first year, so I'm not going to get it. Well, it turns out I wouldn't say most, many credit cards, probably around half of credit cards that have an annual fee, have what's called a downgrade path, which means that you're able to actually downgrade the card to a no annual fee card once you've had it for 12 months, but before the annual fee kicks in for the next year. There's like a 1-month grace period where once you've had a card for 12 months, your sign-up bonus is not going to get clawed back if you downgrade it, but someone just entered the waiting room, let's let them in. Yeah, where your sign-up bonus isn't going to get clawed back if you've had the card for 12 months, but the new sign-up bonus will get refunded if you downgrade it within 1 month of that. So within the first month of the second year of having the card. And if you do that, your credit is actually impacted the same way right, as if you just kept the card, because the average age of your accounts, which we'll talk about this in a little bit, but the average age of your accounts stays the same. You didn't close a card, which looks bad for your credit, but you don't have to pay the annual fee anymore. So usually you don't have to really worry about these high annual fees coming back to bite you if you got a card just for the sign-up bonus, because most of them you're able to downgrade. Okay, so we touched on this a little bit earlier, but when it comes to point value, this is really important, because the difference between whether or not you should focus on travel versus you should focus on cash back, right? That all comes down to the point value. If you value these points at less than 1 cent per point, right, then cash back becomes a much better deal. The only reason you should focus on travel is because you can get so much more value this way. So here we just have some of the flexible point values. So a flexible point means that you're able to transfer the points from the bank to a specific airline or hotel. And that's really, we're going to get into this in the second half when we talk about redeeming points and show some real life examples. But that's really where the value comes from when you're talking about redeeming for travel. Just using Chase points, for example, or Amex points in the Amex portal to book travel, you're really only going to get around 1 cent per point. Chase, with the Sapphire Reserve, gives you 1.5 cents per point, which is okay. And with the Chase Sapphire Preferred, you can get 1.25 cents per point. But most of the time in these travel portals, you're looking at around 1 cent per point. Sometimes even less, because the travel portals have marked up prices. And so you really shouldn't be using your points like that. That's just like using them for cash back. So if you were booking Delta flights by going into your Amex portal and just booking Delta flights directly, right, that's not a good way to be using your points. You're not going to get a lot of value. What you have to do, if you want to maximize your value, is you have to transfer your points from one of the banks and to a specific airline or hotel that happens to have a good redemption for the trip that you want to take. So for example, if you want to book a flight on Delta, right, you could transfer your Amex points directly to Delta, but you can do even better than that, because Delta is a transfer partner, or is an alliance partner. They're in the same airline alliance with Virgin Airlines, and so you can transfer your Chase points, for example, even though Chase isn't a partner with Delta, you can transfer your Chase points to the Virgin Atlantic Flying Club, and in the Virgin Atlantic Flying Club's online portal, you can then book your Delta flight for a cheaper price in terms of number of points than booking it directly with Amex or booking it directly with Delta if you transferred your Amex points to Delta. You can even transfer your Amex points to Virgin and then book the Delta flight with the Virgin points from Amex, because that's still usually cheaper than using your Delta points. And you can find flights all over the East Coast, for example, for just 7,500 Virgin Atlantic miles, and almost every major point value transfers to them. The reason why the Bilt points here are the most valuable is because they have two of the most valuable transfer partners. On the hotel side, them, along with Chase, have access to Hyatt, and Hyatt is far and away the most valuable hotel transfer partner. Their points are incredibly valuable. And then Alaska Airlines is far and away the most valuable transfer partner on the airline side, because they're partners with American Airlines and Etihad, which most people are transfer partners with. You don't have to remember all this. I'm just kind of giving you an idea so you understand what types of things to look for. So like Etihad is also part of the One World Alliance, and so you can book American Airlines flights on Etihad. And American Airlines is known for being the cheapest airline to book with points, so they have the best points deals. But Alaska is also in the same alliance as American, and usually Alaska has the best deals of all the transfer partners. And not to mention American Airlines, you can also book, for example, you can use your Alaska points to book LL flights. I know that's important to a lot of you, for really great deals also. All right, when we talk about the card value, so we just spoke about point value and how most of these transferable currencies have a point value of around 2 cents per point. We also spoke a little bit about cash back. We also spoke about the different benefits and the different credits and the different multipliers that different cards offer. And so what we're doing right here is kind of putting all the pieces together. And so if you look at this current slide, the card value for a card is equal. So if you look at the total value, this is what I'll just tell you what you're looking at here. You're looking at basically the back end, what it looks like on our end when someone signs up to PointWise. This is actually my personal results. And so this is how much each card is worth for me specifically based on my personal spending. And if you look, the Chase Ink Business Preferred card is what came out up top. And so that's why that's the most recent card that I got. But the reason why it's the most valuable card is really interesting because
Can you
looking at
zoom
this
in,
graph,
Ken?
right? Yep.
Can you zoom in?
Oh, absolutely. Can you guys not see so clearly? Wait. Um, it's not letting me zoom in right now, but I will send. Let's see if I can send. Can I send screenshots to the chat? Is it readable?
It's clear, just a little small.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, it doesn't
Zoom
look
in on
like I
mine,
can
it
zoom in
is.
present mode. But yeah, what you're looking at here basically is the value of each of these cards to me right now. And so one thing that stands out off the page is that the spend value for my top card is $7. The benefit value, $0. The annual fee, $95. And so most people would look at that card and think, wow, right? That card's not worth it to me because in the second year, they're not going to give me the sign-up bonus again. But they don't realize that the sign-up bonus is 120,000 chase points, which are worth $2,400, which makes it almost twice as valuable as my next most valuable card. That's not always true, right? If you look at the built card, which is 6 or 7 from the top, right? That they don't have a sign-up bonus, so their sign-up value is almost useless. But their spend value, just by getting that 1x back on rents, is worth over $1,000 to me. So you can't just look at the multipliers or just look at the sign-up bonus or even just look at the benefits to see whether or not a card is worth it for you. You really have to look at the holistic picture. And you shouldn't be thinking of credit cards like, oh, I want the right like 3% back card for this, or I want a 3% back card for that category, right? You have to be looking at it in terms of overall, what's my best next card? And that might be a card like the Chase Sapphire Reserve for me that would give me $350 in spend value and $330 in benefit value, right? But it also might be a card like the Inc. Business Preferred card, which gives me, $7 in spend value and 0 in benefit value. So it really depends on your specific situation. And this is one of the great things about PointWise, right? We actually drill down to see exactly where your spending is so that you can know exactly which card you should be getting. So if we drill down deeper into the specific card, so this is the Chase Sapphire Reserve, which was second on the list, if you recall. So this card here, where does the actual spend value come from? Almost all of it comes from Lyft, because Lyft, you actually get 10x back on the Chase Sapphire Reserve. And so if you take Lyft or Ubers, PointWise will count that as rideshare. And if you get 10x back on Lyft rides, right, that's worth $354 to me. They also have a $300 travel credit, right, which is worth $300 to me because I spend more than $300 a year on travel. But the DoorDash credit, worth $120, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, but the DoorDash credit that's worth $120, that's worth nothing to me because I never use DoorDash. And so this is the kind of thing that we're able to tell you, okay, here's exactly how valuable this card is to you. Okay, this is also really important. A lot of people have the mindset of, again, this goes back to the people who think of credit cards in terms of like, oh, I need my 3% card here, my 5% card here. If you think of credit cards that way, you're not going to do so well because you're optimizing for the hundreds of dollars a year, right? But when you're thinking about the thousands of dollars per year, right? Just imagine on this page, I decided not just to get the top card, but to get the top 5 cards in a year. I can just add those numbers up basically, and that's how much money I get back each year because it's not dependent on the spend value, right? If I'm trying to optimize for spend value, the maximum amount of points I can get in a year is like $500 worth of value for my cards. Maybe if I get the built one also like $1,500 worth of value. If I combine some of the ones up here at the top, I can easily get $3,000 to $5,000 a year worth of value. I just open like 2 to 4 cards in a year. And some people think that's too hard or that's going to hurt their credit score. So first, I'll tackle the credit score issue. It's actually not bad for your credit score. On the contrary, it's good for your credit score. Applying for a new credit card is marginally bad for your credit card in the very short term, which means in the next 3 to 6 months, your credit score is probably going to go down around 10 points for each card you apply for. And that's fine. That doesn't matter. As long as your credit score is above 700, you're not going to really get denied for credit cards because of a poor credit score. But what it does help with is part of the things that help your credit score is the average age of your account and the age of your oldest and how many overall accounts you have and the age of your oldest account. So opening a card when you're 18 and just keeping it open forever, if that's a no annual fee card, right? Just having it there, even if you don't use it, excellent for your credit because it keeps your average age of accounts up and it keeps your oldest account age high. Getting a lot of cards makes your total number of accounts high, which actually helps your credit score. If you think of it from the bank's logic, right? The bank is basically telling you, hey, we know, or you're basically telling the bank, like, hey, I can handle lots of lines of credit without defaulting on them. So therefore, you can trust me to take out another marginal one, line of credit. And so having lots of cards hurts your credit score in the short term because when you apply for cards, that hard inquiry hurts your credit score a little bit. But hard inquiries stop affecting your score after 6 months, and they're totally wiped off your report within 2 years. But they don't affect your score after 6 months. And so it really doesn't matter. It's also a tiny difference on the downside when the more number of accounts that you're able to have. And also you're going to get, when you open a new credit card, you get more available credit. And one of the other things that impacts your credit is your percentage of credit used, your credit utilization rate. And so your credit utilization rate goes down, which is a good thing when you open new cards, because hopefully your spending stays the same, but you have more available credit. And so that also helps your credit score. So in the average, in the short term, it's probably going to be around a wash. And in the long term, having more cards is how you get to that, really, really exciting and elusive 800 plus credit score. So which card should you get? I mean, I've plugged PointWise a little bit here. This is the last I'm going to do it, and then we're going to get into how to redeem your points for max value. But yeah, this is what we do. This is why we're doing the webinar, to introduce people to PointWise. We'll tell you which credit card to get with absolute certainty. There's a button in there that says call a founder on the recommendation page. That'll call me, and you can ask me any questions about your specific profile. We can dig into the details. Or if you have any suggestions for the app, features you'd want to have, always super excited to hear that. But that brings us to the second part of our presentation, which is you've earned all these points, you have the right credit cards, you're not so worried about how many credit cards you're going to get. You're just going to get a few a year and kind of take it from there. But okay, now you need to travel, right? How do you actually use these points in order to get max value? If you want to get those lie flat seats on the plane, if you want to be able to stay at 5-star hotels, or if you just want to go back home, see your parents, or go to Israel, right? How do you actually use these points for the maximum value? And so again, why use points for travel? We've spoken about this. There are really 3 keys, and if you listen to these 3 keys, it'll become much more simple than you think to get great value from the points that you have. Number 1 is, like we hinted to earlier, always redeem points with transfer partners. You never want to go to a travel portal and just book with your points directly unless, and only unless, you're talking about the Chase travel portal and you have Chase Sapphire Reserve to get your 1.5% back in their travel portal, or your 1.5 cents per point value in their travel portal. And there are really no redemptions available with transfer partners, but that's a very rare situation. Almost always, you want to redeem your points with a transfer partner. So the question is, okay, there are a million transfer partners, right? How do I know which transfer partner to use? And we're going to make that really, really easy for you in just a second. The next thing is you either want to book last second or like way in advance. If you try to book with points like 1 or 2 weeks out, you're going to find there always going to be something available, but you're going to find that the redemptions available are not going to have such great value. You're going to get closer to 1 cent per point, maybe even less than that, because that's kind of the sweet spot where these airlines are still hoping to sell the tickets to cash passengers, but they're not willing to give you a premium or they're not willing to give you a discount for booking way in advance, so just so that they have the certainty of it being booked, and they're not willing to just give it to you for dirt cheap because it's right before the flight. So this is also one of the big differences between cash and points. Points let the airlines and hotels price discriminate, which is really important, because if you notice with cash, if you book immediately before, it doesn't get cheaper, it gets more expensive. And that's because the people who are booking last second with cash really need to go right then. And so they are people who the airlines and hotels are able to charge a lot of money to. They might be business travelers traveling last second for a client. They might be, family traveling for, some sort of emergency, right? But the people who book last second are usually not the people who are price sensitive. Those are people who are going to pay whatever cash price they want. However, the airlines and hotels have no guarantee that those people are going to show up today, right? And so they want to make sure that from those people who are willing to pay top dollar, they get top dollar from them. But they also want to make sure that if those people don't show up, they're able to sell the tickets for something, or they're able to book the nights in the hotel for something. And so that's when they go to the points world and they say, okay, if you're booking on points, that means you're a bargain hunter. So if you're booking on points, we're willing to give you the same thing for a much lower price because you're not going to pay top dollar and we want to at least get something for it. And so that's why prices go down when you book for points right before the presentation, or I'm sorry, right before the actual travel date. Lastly, if you book way in advance, travel flexibility, like if you're willing to fly, closer to the evening instead of the middle of the day, right, you're going to get much better points redemptions just for being a little flexible. Or if you're willing to fly on a weekday instead of a weekend, like those small things, or if you're willing to do a layover, even if it's, a 1-2 hour quick layover, like if you're willing to do a layover at all, your points redemption options get much better for flights. So just things like that can be the difference between getting like a half a cent per point worth of value or like 5. And that's like a massive, massive difference. So here's how you do it. What you're going to do is you're going to go to an award search tool. There are a few that we're going to look at in just a few minutes. You're going to search for your trip. Once you find a trip, like an itinerary that works for you, whether it be with hotels or with an airline or with a flight, before booking it and before actually transferring your points, you're going to want to go to that airline or to that program. Say, for example, you're booking a Delta flight through Virgin. You're going to want to make an account on Virgin, and you only have to make the account once. But once you go and you want to search on Virgin for that flight, and you want to make sure it's actually there, because sometimes these award search tools that help you figure out who the transfer partners are and who has the availability, they're not perfect and they're a little delayed. So they could say there's one ticket left at this price at this airline, but then you might go transfer your point and go to book it and it's not there anymore because that was a half hour ago. And so you just want to go and make sure that the availability is actually there. And then you want to transfer your points and actually book the ticket with the partner. So here are some sample bookings that I've done recently. So this was my wife and I, we were going to Los Angeles to see her family. This flight specifically was $143 if we were to book it directly with American. And we ended up booking it for only 5,000 miles each, or 10,000 for the both of us. And so there we paid 5,000 miles for something that in cash is $143. So we got around 3 cents per point in value, right? If it were $150, it would be exactly 3 cents per point. And so that's kind of the value. That's a really good redemption, right? 3 cents per point is really, really good. But this is kind of what it looks like, just to show you that the math actually works out. Here's another example. This was on our honeymoon. We stayed at this hotel, which if you convert this to dollars is around $1,650 a night. We only paid 45,000 points for it per night. So that means we got almost 4 cents per point. And this was a Hyatt redemption. Remember, I told you Hyatt redemptions are the most valuable hotel redemptions, and American Airlines are the most valuable airline redemptions. And so you can kind of get an idea for like, this is what the high-end redemptions look like. For example, we would not have been able to stay in a $1,600 a night hotel for 5 nights if it weren't for us collecting a couple Chase sign-up bonuses and using 225,000 Chase points to get the whole thing covered. So we paid the equivalent of $2,250 in cash back, but what we did for that cash back, right, that's basically like paying $400 a night for this hotel instead of $1,600 a night. So I'm not doing this to brag, I'm just doing this to get you excited, right? This is the kind of stuff you can be doing too, and you can open up this incredible redemption value that just wouldn't be available to young professionals like us if it weren't for points. So this is complicated. You don't have to remember all of this. But this is what I was alluding to earlier, right? The different transfer partners. And the reason I'm showing you this, and the one takeaway that I want you to have from this chart is, and you don't have to be able to, I know it's a little blurry, I'm sorry for that, but basically every airline can be flown from every major point system. So for example, Amex is the only one that transfers directly to Delta. But like I said, everyone else transfers to Virgin, and Virgin can be used to book on Delta because they're in the same alliance. So as long as the point system that you're earning can be, has at least like one line to each of these sides of the graph, right? You can book any airline on any other side of the graph. So you can use British Airways points to book American. You can use Etihad to book American, Qatar to book American. The One World Alliance is known to have like the most sweet spots. But again, SkyTeam has Delta and Virgin and KLM, and they're also great. And then you have, the non-alliance airlines who are also part of, this is a little outdated because Alaska is part of One World now, but you get the point, right? Everyone can book, and Virgin is part of SkyTeam. So this is a little outdated. But you get the point. You can book basically any airline with any point system. So you shouldn't be looking at Amex and saying, oh, I have to use my Amex points for Delta. You shouldn't be looking at Chase and saying I can only travel United with my Chase points, because that's not really true. Okay. So now I'll open it up to questions. Actually, before we go to questions, I just want to show you a little bit about these award search tools. I'm going to show you a few examples that I pulled up, and you'll be able to see exactly what I mean here. So let me share something different here, and then we'll get into a Q&A, and you guys can ask anything you want here. All right, give me 1 second here. I'm going to share a different tab. Okay, here we go. All right, so here, this is one of the award search tools. It's a service called Points Yeah. You can go to pointsyeah.com and you'll see it. So I already put in a flight here. I alluded to this a few times, right? A lot of people in this who are going to be viewing this go to Israel pretty frequently. And so here's a really good redemption for Israel. You might think, oh my gosh, 33,000 points plus $530, right? That's not valuable at all. Well, just give me 1 second and you'll really see why it is. So this is not for economy. This is for premium economy, which is something that I would never be flying if I were paying for it with cash, right? That being said, El Al tickets right now for flights to Israel are going for like $1,000 each way, because so many players have, or so many airlines have canceled flights. And so premium economy, all the more so, is looking like around $2,000 at least round trip. And so if you're able to get premium economy for $530 and that's all you're paying, right? That's incredible value, especially because premium economy on international flights looks very much like business and first class on US domestic flights. So just to show you how much this is actually worth in cash, this specific flight, one way, premium economy on Virgin Atlantic with that one stop, this is, you pick any of these, right? You're looking at least $1,800 in cash, right? If you want to get to Israel. But on Virgin, you're looking at $500 and 33,000 points. So 33,000 points would be worth, if that were a cashback card. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go to that link. Yeah, 33,000 points. If that were a cashback card, would be worth around $333 plus $530. You're paying a total of like $830 for that, which again, the economy tickets are going for $1,000, so you're still getting a discount. But the premium economy tickets are going for $1,800, which is crazy. Now, what does that actually buy you? Well, here's what that looks like from the New York to London side. It basically looks like a first-class domestic US seat. And then on the London to Israel, it basically looks like the same. So you're not getting, your own sliding door with a lie flat bed here, but you're basically getting what domestic business class looks like for way cheaper than it's offering, right? Your 33,000 points are accounting for like $1,300 of this fare, and then the $500 that you have to pay here is just taxes and fees, which are the unfortunate, unavoidable problem in this, points journey. Now let's give you a hotel example too, and then we'll open it up to questions. Here's a great website for hotels. It's a little janky and a little clunky, but it gets the job done. It's called maxmypoint.com, and all of these sites that I'm showing you have some free options. So again, pointsyeah.com for flights. This is, in my opinion, the best way to search for flights on points. And they show you all the transfer partners. So again, for this, I kind of rushed through this, but you can use any of these points, transfer to Virgin, and then book it. This actually is a Virgin flight. So that's one example, but it tells you for all different places you can go, and you can do searches, exactly how to get there on points, which currencies you want to transfer from, things like that. So now let's go to hotels. So again, maxmypoint.com. This is the best place that I've found for finding hotel value. You can, again, go to the map section here. They call it search. They have a lot of pop ads, but whatever. So if you go to search, you can basically search on a map. So this is showing Cancun right now. Every different hotel that's there and kind of the redemption cost. So I've already pulled one up here. This is a Grand Hyatt, which is one of Hyatt's highest end hotels in Kauai, their resort and spa in Hawaii. And if you look right here for just a week from now, remember I told you, or even for tomorrow, remember I told you booking last second with points is really great. So if you want to book last second, you're looking at $900 with cash. That's the cash price here. And you're looking at 30,000 points, right? And so if you want to look at what this hotel actually looks, or here's what it costs, right? It costs $900 to stay here for these same dates that you could get with 30,000 points. So it's like a 3 cent per point redemption. And if you're looking at what this resort actually is, I mean, it's beautiful. It's a 5-star hotel in the middle of Hawaii. I mean, I'll just show you some pictures here. Like the golf course, pools, beautiful, beautiful place. Here are the rooms. So you're looking at a 5-star $900 a night hotel, and you're booking that for just 30,000 points. So I'll stop screen sharing right here. Stop share. And yeah, I hope that was informative to you guys, at least just a little bit. And I'm happy to take any questions.